Hey, what's up? Do you have Oh yeah, so let's talk about a couple stuff you said in the comments first, I guess, so we can read them.
Go ahead, yeah.
Atheism, self-refutes your rights to morals and meaning. So let's,
Yeah.
and I want to, if yeah, let's just break it down, right? So
Can I have
so
some statements before you go ahead?
let's well, hold on, Let's understand what a right is, right? So when you talk about rights to morals and meaning, what is a right in this context?
I mean, you can almost insert any positive energy kind of a verb there. I would say right or natural
I'm
connection
asking what
to
you mean by right there.
your atheism self refutes your
I'm
direct
not asking you that.
orientation.
I'm asking you
Yeah.
what the word. Look, you're not understanding.
Sorry,
I
I
understand
maybe I
some
worded the
people
word okay.
might. I don't know. You're over talking. I understand some people might be slower than others. So let me work with you to understand the dialectic at hand. What we want is you to maybe enunciate a definition. If maybe you can inform me what right there means by cashing it out with a definition, that would be the easiest way to do it. Do you have a definition for right?
By right,
And that's a yes or no.
yeah.
Yes.
Transcendent
Okay. What's the
origin.
definition?
Transcendent origin.
Transcendent origin. Okay. And what is a transcendent origin? What does that mean?
Meaning equality.
So also, let's just translate this into the sentence and show there's already a grammatical issue. So
Yeah,
by
I knew I said it wrong. Yeah.
by right to meaning and morals, you mean what we don't have, or sorry, it refutes your transcendental origin to morals and meaning. Now
Yeah.
that just doesn't sound like that makes any sense, right? Surely,
Yeah.
just from that alone, that already gives me the impression that's not what you aim to communicate. But supposing it is, in any case, what is a transcendental origin? What does that mean?
Okay, well, let me flip. Can I flip the script a little bit just for a moment, or you to kind of explain the
No, I want
concept?
you to answer that question. If you have a definition for that
Okay,
too, that would
so
be
the
great.
definition of transcendental or transcendent origin means by step. So each generation creates another generation, so to speak, right? Would you agree with that?
I don't know what you mean agree with that. I'm asking you if you can offer a definition. So definitions aren't
Continuation
propositions.
continuation
So
on step. Yeah,
you
like
you
inductive.
can't agree on definitions. I just want to understand what is it exactly you mean by transcendental origin.
Transcendental by definition. I don't know if you know the definition of transcendental, or you want to look it up.
I want you to define it, right?
Okay, transcendental means continuous and sometimes with step, like inductive reasoning.
So you're saying a continuous origin, is that right?
No, from an origin to continuum.
But you just said what you mean by transcendental is continuous, right?
Well,
And that's used.
it's a
Yeah, and
mathematical term, sort of.
It's a what?
Maybe
Yeah.
this works better. Maybe it's not a phrase that could be broken down by the meaning of its individual words. Maybe it's a phrase that those two joint words have a specific designated meaning or semantics. Is that right? If that's right, you can offer the definition of transcendental origin, because you're saying continuous as a synonym for transcendental, and then walking back that's what you mean when I asked you if that translates to continuous origin. Now it just seems murky. So maybe just define the phrase transcendental origin. Make it as easy as that.
So transcendental origin all by itself is not very meaningful. With the words before and after, I think we're over-articulating. Atheism self-refutes. You understood that part. Your
Wait, just answer the question. What you mean by transcendental origin?
Origin is more to do with origin to morals and meaning. So that's more for the second part, not really for. It's not.
Well, I'm asking. Well, okay, maybe you're not. Maybe there's. Well, either way, you wouldn't be answering any question that I'm asking you. But maybe this will help, since you're incapable of answering the question. Is the meaning of the phrase understood by the two terms, or is it one termed phrase?
We can remove transcendent if it's too complicated for you.
Can we answer that question?
We don't even need transcendent. We can drop that if that makes you feel better.
Okay, so you're saying there's a complete. So you're saying there's. Okay, let me just get clear. You're saying you're opting for a reiteration of your point in a way that's more clear. Is that right? Where you can
hopefully
use the word.
I'll use the word transcendent.
So the initial proposition was that we lose the right to morals and meaning. Now you want to reinvent the proposition. Okay, what is the new proposition?
I'm just trying to trim it so that it's simple enough that
Sure. Yeah, you want to reiterate it. Okay, so what is the reiteration?
The reiteration is removing transcendent because it seems to be too complicated a word.
No, I understand the meaning of it.
I understand you want to reiterate it in a way that you cut out the word transcendental. I'm now asking you, because we broke down what it meant for something to be a right, and you meant a transcendental origin, and by that you had no analysis. So now what you're saying is you rather reiterate the proposition, to which you don't need to use that type of terminology. Okay, so now just what's now, to be clear, the proposition you said in text was atheism self-refutes your right to morals and meaning. Now what's the reiteration of the proposition? Okay,
first reiteration you've labeled. Second reiteration was atheism self-refutes transcendent origin to morals and meaning.
No, I'm saying, look, we tried breaking down the meaning of that claim, and you are incapable of defining it, because what it got to is defining a specific phrase, which was transcendental origin, which we were stuck on, and you said you'd rather not define that term. But that term was reduced from the meaning of right in the proposition. So I asked you, do you want to reiterate it in a way that entirely avoids it? You said yes, so now I'm asking you to make what is the new way you're going to...
Okay, to finalize...
Yeah, what's the reiteration?
Concept or statement or theory or whatever you want to call the words we've chosen here, or I've chosen for you. Atheism self-refutes your origin to morals and meaning.
Can I just ask you a
There's only
question
corollary.
for
Wait, hold on.
clarification? You
Well,
think
I want to do a one-on-one, to be honest,
All right.
because I barely get it. I mean,
Go ahead.
I guess it depends. Do you think it's really good the way you're going, Jack?
well, I
Like,
think
do you
it's the
think it would be
less
best?
gibberish route, but if you know, I
Okay.
don't want to take
Just
away
for
your
that comment,
fun.
I think it's fine. Yeah, I'll keep my fun with the gibberish then.
All right.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so just repeat it again, the proposition. In fact, I'll write it out
Atheism
just so.
self-refutes your, or any person's, I guess you'd say, and like your could be any person we're defining as an atheist. Atheism self-refutes your origin to morals and meaning. So you're being an atheist I'm speaking with.
Okay, so let me write it out. Atheism self refutes the origin to morals and meaning, you said?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, this just sounds like gibberish. So, first,
I would say your, because I have to make it slightly subjective, unless you wish to make it a Boolean.
well, I wrote it out as just the origin. I just wrote out the origin to morals and meaning. But
yeah,
in
I
any
would say
case,
your. I would say a person. Put a person instead. Because I
your
don't
origin.
include all objective, unless you're wishing to live in a realm of
person's-
objective reasoning.
We're here to help you with your argument.
So, yeah, so it self refutes a person's origin to morals and meaning. What is an origin to morals and meaning I'm supposed to be saying?
The description of the Big Bang was a chemical process. It has no kind of.
I'm not asking you. I'm not asking you that. I'm fine with granting you for the sake of the argument the Big Bang is false. First, I have a very strong confidence you have no understanding of the Big Bang and it's not even remotely close to what you think it is. But the Big Bang is something that does not actually involve my atheism. My beliefs there is not a God is not at all influenced by the Big Bang. And I'm fine with granting this physical theory is false because that does nothing to lose or gain any force in this philosophy of religion dispute. So I don't know why you're mentioning the Big Bang because one, that's obviously not an answer. So you know you're dodging when you do that. Two, if you believe that the Big Bang is pertinent to either my belief in a God not existing or your belief that a God exists, that just sounds like you're a really low-tier, confused individual. So let's get off the Big Bang and just try and answer the question I asked. What do you mean a person's origin to morals and meaning? What does that mean?
Atheism. Well, I got to define atheism first, don't I? We're gonna go all,
no. Just answer my question. No. Just answer my question.
What's your question? Go ahead.
Okay, so you're not listening. This is the third. This is the third time I've said it. You got to be more attentive, right? Turn on the listening ears. Now, focus. From now on in the conversation, since you haven't had them on, turn them on. Okay, now that we're clear, hopefully your listening ears are on. What do you mean by a person's origin to morals and meaning?
Where a person derives their morals and meaning from, any kind of a priori foundation.
Okay, so a person's origin to morals and meaning is where they generate their views about meaning and morals. Is that right?
That's correct. So a priori kind of.
Okay, let me write that down.
Yeah. It kind of allows you to scribble where it's like lines and color all the basic kind of thing. That's a good analogy.
Okay. Now, by self-refuting, I understand something to be self-refuting when there's a type of speech act or something like this. This is at least one way that I strongly consider when someone talks about self-refuting. Yeah. Either when an argument maybe possesses a contradiction, or that's all I think I take it to mean by self-refuting. Is that the claim you're making, that there's a contradiction in being an atheist and having some theory of origin about morals and meaning or something?
I would say it allows for, basically when I say self-refute the person's origin of morals and meaning, there's no exact rules or regulations on morals and meaning. So you don't actually have to live a meaningful life, or there's no...
Well, that just sounds... Well,
meaning is left to interpretation.
Well, okay, well, it seems like you're saying... I'm not... Look, come on. Look, it seems like you defined self-refuting in a very idiosyncratic way. I'm not entirely clear what that was, and we might need to go over that again. So okay, just to make it very apparent to us, you're not saying that there's a contradiction. Is that right?
I'm saying there is a form of a contradiction, but it involves both the subjective and the
objective. Wait. Let's stop there. So the charge is that there's a contradiction, yes or no?
Yeah, there's a contradiction between developing self-sustaining morals and...
Okay, so let's just get you purporting the contradiction. Just tell me what the contradiction is.
An origin is typically a foundation or rule set, some kind of axioms or belief system that allows you to develop something on top of it. Origin by origin.
I'm not asking you to define words right now if you're not following. Right. I'm not asking you to do what you're doing right now. Okay. Look, I'll repeat it, right? Again, and like this is the issue about the listening ears. I'm asking you if now that you're claiming there's a contradiction, can you purport what the contradiction is? What is the contradiction you believe is entailed from being an atheist? That there's some contradiction about moral theories or theories of meaning, or the way we derive a theory of morals or meaning.
Okay, well, the most simple contradiction I would say is that an atheist, by default, is allowed to, or not allowed to, but is, let me reword it, give me a moment. Atheism promotes amoralism and a meaning, meaning like,
atheism doesn't, I don't know what you mean. Wait, when you say atheism promotes X, what do you mean by atheism promotes? What is that supposed to be saying?
When you're an atheist, you have the choice between moral and amoralism.
Yeah, but that's not an answer. Again, like, look, are you saying that when you say when atheism promotes X, Y, Z, is what you're saying that atheists tend to adopt this view and argue for it in a way that convinces others, or what are you saying?
What I'm trying to say is you lack a rule set derived from a deity.
But what about the wait? But hold on. I
Yeah,
offered you an interpretation of what you're saying. Was that accurate or no?
sort of. I would say that atheism allows for a lot of play in the way.
Okay, but you understand that doesn't follow from the meaning of atheism, right? Now you're talking about a synthetic thing. Like imagine it's true. Imagine a statistical fact. Like most people who believe in Santa Claus happen to harm others, right?
Right.
From that, you want to claim that people promote that, and all you mean is that it's true that people who have this particular belief also have the statistical trend of doing this given action, right? Which is doing a harm. In the same way, you want to say people who don't believe a supernatural agent created the universe, they tend to argue and try and compel others to believe views that don't actually follow from what it means to be an atheist, just like it doesn't follow from believing in Santa. You do that. So I don't see why. So it seems like you're making a political objection almost. You might want to argue. I mean, this doesn't seem like this has any strong tie to atheism at all at that point.
Right.
First, also, let's get clear what it is, the thing you're also claiming atheists are even promoting. So you're saying that atheists are tend to try and compel people to believe certain views about morals and meaning that are what?
That there is some origin to them, not just chemical soup or chemical kind of derivation to morals.
Most atheists in academic philosophy are not. They're not reductionists. They're not this. They don't have this view that everything reduces to chemicals. So that's actually an extremely fringe amount of people in philosophy who are atheists. So this is not even capturing most people who are atheists. So this view about philosophers who are atheists believe in chemicals is actually just it's actually painfully inaccurate, right? It's actually a very uncharitable characterization of their views, because if you bother to look at surveys, you would see many of them are actually supernaturalists. Many of them are Platonists who are atheists. So it's actually wrong that they have these views. So again, not only did the claims you make about what most atheists tend to believe not be accurate, but it seems like this is not something entailed from atheism, such that it's not something that actually has anything to do with atheism in principle. It has to do with a set of facts. People who happen to have the belief there's not a God also tend to do these things, which, unless you're making the claim they're causally wedded, I would like to see the argument for that.
Evidence-based, or the arguments with words, like statistics?
No.
Well, the empirical facts is the statistics is what's being questioned. We have supposed that we're a statistical fact, right? Which it obviously is also not true, like I explained. I'm saying even if it were a statistical fact, how do you show those are causally tied? Like, look back at the hypothetical I gave you. We have a hypothetical world where it's an empirical fact that most people believe in Santa attempt to harm others. Now, if the claim is that the belief Santa exists causes people to harm people, that's what's in question. Now, the fact you claimed about atheists believing in the stuff you said is just so incredibly wrong, right? It's like you obviously haven't bothered to look at any of the empirical research about philosophers' beliefs who are atheists, because this is like incredibly inaccurate. But I'm granting you for the sake of argument, because if it's something synthetically true, then it's questionable how they're causally tied.
Right. So you're thinking that I want a political movement out of this. No, I don't think I do. What I would state to you is that when I say origin, I'm refusing to believe that there is an origin in the story of atheism, meaning like in the narrative or in the descriptors that involve atheism that suggest to me that there can be...
Atheism is not a story, by the way. It's not... So look, one thing is atheism... Well, I don't know what that's saying, and that's not... Look, atheism is not a story in the way you would say Christianity or some type of theology is a story.
Agnosticism is
atheism isn't a physical story. It's not even some metaphysical narrative. So when you say story, it's not clear what you mean by that, because either you're saying something that's idiosyncratic by story, where the account of story most people have is something like a series of events, right? Some description of events, which atheists... Sorry, you're over talking me, and I wasn't finished. But what were you saying?
It's empirically based. Your evidence for atheism, correct? Is what you're saying. It's not a story. That's the only alternative, I believe, correct?
No.
Well, hold on. I'm not even understanding what you're asking.
It's a theory.
You're asking if my reasons. Well, no. Wait, hold on. I'm not understanding what you're asking. If you can help to work with me, is your statement? The question you're asking. You're asking if I'm an atheist based on empirical means.
Yes, correct. Or what? Can I ask what your sort of evidence or any kind of? Because if it's not a story, then you need hard evidence, correct? It's not a fiction or a narrative or a statement on reality.
Well, my point was that atheism doesn't describe a story the way a theology does, right? There is no story with being an atheist. Sorry?
I would tend to argue with that very clearly and soundly.
I don't know what you're even saying right now. Are you saying you're disagreeing with what I'm saying?
That atheism is not a story. I would say, in fact, it is a story. It has a narrative. It has a meaningful...
What do you think? What is the narrative you think atheists are committed to?
I would say agnostics. If you were truly believing in Booleans
I'm
and,
not.
and
No,
God,
no. What's the atheist story? Tell me the story.
there is no God. We actually don't have any evidence for or against God. We just know that
That's
there might
not.
be.
That's a proposition. That's not a
Yeah.
story. If I say I don't
Yeah.
believe John walked his dog yesterday, that's not a
Yeah.
story, right?
Right.
Okay. So what we would say is a story, for example, is Christianity that attests to a conjunction of historical facts that,
Mhm.
in conjunct, they generate a narrative or a story. Now you're
That's
making
true.
the claim that atheism does the same. What is the
Yeah.
story atheism does?
A sophisticated collection and narrative and conjunction, as you said, of facts and data that's more sophisticated than the previous aforementioned
I'm
theological
asking you to
argument.
tell me the story. Just tell me what the story is.
Lucy, that caught electrical power in it, the primordial soup story of that test they did in New York, several other
That's not
experiments.
atheism.
That's a form
Wait,
of,
hold on. I'm not.
yeah.
Wait. Let's just make clear what is. I can't make out what you're saying too. You're like mumbling maybe a bit,
You're
but
saying that there is. So you're
I
just
heard
purely.
something like chemical soup.
He thinks the
I'm
Uri
talking about,
Miller experiment is
yeah,
part of
I'm
the
not really
atheist
Miller
story.
experiment. Yeah,
The Uri Miller
atheism.
experiment.
Yeah,
What is
atheism
that
appear out of
supposed to be?
nowhere.
That's where they
Atheism
put a
doesn't
bunch
appear
of
out of nowhere.
chemicals in a lab and they zapped it
Yeah,
with electricity and created amino acids. And it's
and
used
said,
as
yeah.
initial ideas about
That just
abiogenesis.
sounds. That just sounds like some description of facts that obtained from a scientific experiment. That's not a narrative.
It has nothing
Mm.
to do with atheism.
Okay, so you're purely riding on the one statement or
A
living on that
basic
one statement.
story
Yeah,
is something like a supernatural agent happened to have the intentions to create a world of delight in which he spoke the world into existence and ex
Mhm.
nihilo manifested. That's a
Yeah,
brief example of a story that theism is generally committed to. Now, what
that's
is the
true.
one the atheist is committed to?
I guess in your case, none. You haven't committed to any story. You just assume that there is no God.
Okay, so we are walking back the claim that an atheist is committed to the story. Okay, so yeah, obviously an atheist isn't committed to any story. In fact, to say there's a story of the origin of the universe is actually something most atheists don't agree on, as
So
opposed
you're
to theists who it's committed from theism that they believe that there's a supernatural agent that
right.
explains the universe.
You
Where
don't
an
actually.
atheist,
Yeah.
you don't have to even believe there's an explanation to the universe at all.
Can I ask a question? So you're what's called, I call a negative atheist, meaning you espouse your beliefs, but you don't espouse them in kind of like a how can I say? There's positive and negative atheism. I'm not thinking of the terms. Negative
I
atheism is
think the
closer to
existence of
agnosticism.
God
Yeah,
is, well, I'm technically considered an agnostic. Many have told
that's
me.
where I'm
I
confused.
think
Yeah,
theism is unintelligible. I
yeah,
don't think theism is intelligible. I think it's like literally like a baby saying gibberish, right? That's
yeah.
the proposition, the quote unquote proposition God exists. I think there's like a lot of metaphysical baggage to unload, and the more and more
Right.
you unload, the more you realize it's not saying anything meaningful. That's my view, at least. But what we could do is we can do this type of move that proponents do
Okay.
in maybe like ethical discourse, where people tend to not have like make sense of views like more realism. Like there's people who don't think objective morality makes any sense. Yet they not understanding the view,
Mhm.
they still understand there's types of criticisms they can raise, right? And in that way, I claim I'm an atheist because I think at best theism is obviously false, and more realistically, theism is not even an intelligible view. Right? It's
Right.
not
So
meaningful. But yeah, go ahead.
when you branch from the kind of, I started as, theoretically, I think we all kind of start agnostic at some point in our life, whether we got away from God or closer to atheism and away from atheism and closer to God or whatever your kind of branch on that tree is. But I think most people start off agnostic when it comes to theorizing about reality, and if they're a thinker or whatever, and they weren't taught about God, they weren't taught about atheism, and so you're chasing down the branch of atheism, where I'm going down deism and right into like full-blooded whatever kind of theism I can believe in, because I really believe in it now.
Well, I used to be a Christian apologist. Actually, I was in
Wow.
my investigations, I guess you can say, into philosophy. In fact, the guy on the panel named Jack Ingstreich was actually one
Yeah.
who actually compelled me towards atheism, which is
Yeah.
funny. But in any case, yeah, I actually was one who believed in God for most of my life, still now, and I've
Mhm.
argued for theism very poorly too, obviously. But I don't think it gets much better, anyways. To be fair, but
Yeah.
yeah, so I mean, I don't want to get too much into like this lore dump about our backstories, anyways.
Yeah.
I'm then interested because it seems like you walked back the stuff about the narrative and stuff. So I guess I don't see if you have any. So, like, I mean, the claims you made in text, it seems you've already conceded that you don't have that those fail. Do you have any
I know.
evidence that a God
I
exists?
do. I would say I agree with my statement still that atheism self-refutes quite a bit of the morals and meaning in life, or at least maybe not
But
self-refutes,
when
but
I asked
mutates.
you what was the
Yeah.
contradiction, you said you didn't have a contradiction you can offer.
I wouldn't say it's a full contradiction, because I've known atheists to run perfectly wholesome lifestyles with wholesome marriages and good families and stuff like that. But I would say once people start to chase that chalice of knowledge, however you want to describe it, the treasure chest of knowledge, they tend to run away from God at the beginning, and later on they start to run back to him because of interest in the nature of life from a more humanist kind of standpoint. I'm not describing it either way, but I think that it's a mutating form. Then maybe atheism mutates a person's origin to morals and meaning.
I don't know what any of. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah, what mutation means
Maybe
like,
Josh has a charitable
Yeah,
interpretation
I
of that.
would love to ask him one question. All right,
Go ahead.
just assume for the sake of argument that there is no God, that
Yeah,
we did arrive by chance,
right,
like the most improbable whatever, right? Like, and we're
right,
just here, and there's no God,
right.
and you still have your family, you still
Yeah,
love them, you
yeah,
still have community. Like,
yeah.
why is your life not meaningful?
I would
Isn't
say
your life
reason.
meaningful
Yeah.
to you?
But the specific word that I put was origin for a reason. I said reason, like the origin of your foundation. It can be meaningful, but if you know you're just going to end up dirt and your children go on and there's no kind of your
No,
sustenance of
that again,
collectiveness.
that's not an error. Again, that's not a commitment of atheism. In fact, there are
Yeah,
many atheists who believe. Hold on,
yeah,
there are many atheists who
Believe in an
believe in an afterlife.
afterlife or believe in
Look,
reincarnation or
again,
anything like that?
theism. Look,
huh?
let's just break it
Yeah,
down to show you what you're committed to and what you're not. To be a theist is to believe a supernatural agent created the universe. That's it.
yeah,
Literally, that's it. Atheist is the opposite. So there's an open question there whether there's an afterlife, whether a God
yeah,
created it. I can believe there's an afterlife uncreated. I could believe it is created. And maybe the theist would want to say they believe a God created it as they created the world of this type, right? Theists
right.
tend to do that. Like in theology, like Christian theology, of course, God also ex nihilo created heaven and hell, right?
I
Just
understand
as
now.
he did this world, the
Yeah,
natural world. But that has nothing. You're not committed to saying there's an afterlife. I could believe there is an agent that's supernatural that created the universe, but I also think we become dirt at the end. Or I can be an atheist and believe there isn't a God who created the universe, but we don't become dirt in the
right.
end.
It's
Our
all like
consciousness
origin story. Okay,
transfers to another plane or something.
right.
Again, you're just not. Maybe it's true that atheists do commonly have these beliefs, and I actually think they're for good reasons that they tend to, again, divorce themselves from beliefs like there's an afterlife or whatever.
Yeah,
But again, whether it's, I don't think it's to say that it's caused. I think there's actually something different. I think the reasons that they have is the same reasons that not just informs theism or atheism, but informs other views akin to there not being an afterlife, rather than atheism following to the belief there's not an afterlife. I think there's reasons gathered that informs both those beliefs.
right.
Hey, Monkey Boy, let's invert this real quick for him. Let's say that there is a God, right? And he
Theism.
created the universe, but there's no afterlife. And he created it just because he wanted to create something, and this is
Yeah,
what happened. And it's just the case that there are no spirits. He created us
yeah,
as like these meat things, and when we
right,
die, we go into the ground, right? You would say that we have no meaning at that point,
right.
but
So you're saying
there's
basically,
theism. There's
yeah,
theism in that model, right?
But look,
you're saying
just
theism,
like
atheism is
there's
all about
views, hold
devotion
on,
to
but
God.
there's something to notice
Yeah,
about like this teleological question or question about meaning. One
yeah,
thing theists do that's very uncharitable is what they either gerrymander their semantics of meaning, where they like
okay,
constrain meaning to specifically like a cosmic meaning, the meaning of some like transcendent being, where meaning is
yeah,
only whatever a transcendent being designed for us to do. And in that way, we trivially don't have meaning, but that's just not the common, that's not the
right,
folk conception of meaning. Where, of course, when I don't know, buy candy. There's meaning in that because there's like a goal, right? Some aim I'm achieving, where the purpose or
Diabetes.
the meaning in doing that
type B.
is
Yeah,
having some positive qualitative experience, right?
right,
I get a kick out of eating candy. There's like a positive, enjoyable experience in digesting candies, such that the purpose or the meaning of that is to reach that aim. Where of course atheists aren't. There's like no one who's an atheist who are denying there's meaning in that way. Now, if you're a type of theist that's open to the broad sense of meaning that captures that notion, then obviously you don't have meaning. But if you're the type of Weasley theist who really restricts meaning to what was the purpose of a divine creator, and someone doesn't believe in a divine creator, then yeah, they don't believe in the intentions of that thing. In the same way, imagine I said, I believed that, I don't know, imagine I believe Superman's real, right? And the
okay,
reason some woman is alive is because Superman saved them, right? And I
yeah,
say, I believe Superman's purpose, right, in saving her was, I don't know, so he could get her phone number. So the purpose of saving that woman was getting that phone number, right? And
yeah,
that's Superman purpose. Now, if I don't believe in Superman, I don't believe in a purpose like that because I don't believe the intentions of saving women is to get their phone number, right? So
mhm,
then you claim I don't have purpose under my view. There's no purpose in saving women, right? Because the purpose is strictly tied to Superman's intentions. And if Superman's not real, there's not an agent there to have intentions. He's a fiction. He doesn't actually have beliefs, desires, and goals because he's not real.
Yeah, but nobody's going to accept that account of meaning, right? Like they're just going to say,
That's one thing.
yeah,
But also,
yeah,
you're not saying actually anything with force either. You think
I,
you're saying something
I,
forceful, saying you lose meaning. But it's like me saying in the same way you lose the force of saying there's Superman meaning when you don't believe Superman is real.
right.
It's not interesting.
So if Superman's intentions were kind of ambiguous and human, we would not think him very special. That's what you're trying
like,
to say.
why would I care what God's plan for me is if it's totally against what I want to do with my life? And I don't believe he exists. Like, what force does
Yeah.
that have?
Like if he wants to have sex with men and God,
Lots of men.
yeah, and God doesn't want him to do
Don't
that,
restrict me.
why would he care?
Yeah, I guess that. I mean, if you look at the
Yeah.
history of a region known as Egypt, they had a similar philosophical grounding where they said we're mostly going to believe in us being
Yeah.
able to build the afterlife. Like you mentioned earlier, humans can maybe build the afterlife or something like that. That was one of their goals at one point for humans to reincarnate on Earth.
But I think what Jack is more so saying is something more like this. Like imagine Superman, or not Superman. God created me with the purpose to, I don't know, praise him or whatever. But
Right.
imagine it's like my father gave birth to me, right? He slept with a woman to specifically give birth to a son, and his purpose for me is just to work his field, right? Just be like a slave or something, right? Why would I
Okay.
care if that's the purpose for why my father brought me into existence, right? That might be true, the purpose my father designed me for, but like, who cares? Like, there's not, what am I losing in not caring for the purpose he designed me for? Right.
Do you
Of
think
course,
God
in
intends
cases
it
in
for that
which
purpose?
I have reason to believe if I don't follow in what God authors or like tells us to do, that I might get like eternally damned, right? I go to hell or
I guess.
something. But
Yeah.
in cases in which that's not true, why would I care?
Maybe that
Or even if I have
explains
good
why.
reason to believe there isn't a hell at all, right? Or a God of that type, then I would care even
Yeah.
less.
Maybe that explains why you don't look fully black, because your father was a slave owner.
I was going to ask you a quick question. I said I'm not a huge fan of the whole God gave me a purpose program that a lot of people believe in. I agree to some extent that God respects
I mean, you're
people's
running the
freedom.
argument.
The whole point of a lot of the texts I've read about deities or the deification of the human spirit suggests that God or the gods, however you want to see that, the prophets who've existed in the past, what I think are gods, most of them have given an idea that you're not unlimited, or you're not limited. Sorry, God does not limit you. He recommends things. He prefers you do things a certain way. But I don't think he authors your life. I don't think he controls you in any way or tells you what to do or requires you to do stuff for him, like you said about
But
that
why
guy.
not think my purpose is not to serve God, but rather, I don't know, like Josh, become like a professional dancer, right?
I don't think even the word serve is the
Like a
right word. You're
ballerina.
supposed to respect God and learn from God. I don't think you have to serve him. You're not a slave or a servant. Or
Well,
even
well, Christian is going to say there's like a range of rules that you ought obey, and those are considered serving God, right? And
Christians do
Yeah.
believe
the
they're
purpose
slaves to
of
God.
us is to do this thing. Technically, yeah, they do,
Yeah.
right?
Right. I looked at Egyptian culture and how it faltered and flailed and fell apart. And I just realized that even though I like the atheist opinion of the world, I don't think humans will ever come up with its own deification of heaven kind of thing, its own version of heaven. That's what they're trying to do ultimately. They're trying to store their bodies to live forever.
Yeah,
They
but
thought they'd be
I'm not
dropping
really
regularly
seeing
and
like
coming back to life.
Yeah, but Christians
this
can do that
meaning
too.
stuff doesn't do anything to compel
It's like,
anyone of anything. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
it's obviously not an evidence for God just to say, well, if I tether meaning to a being that someone else doesn't believe, and then I say, well, guess what? You're losing that when you don't
Right.
believe in the being. Like, okay,
I mean, do you think if we
Yeah.
came up with a pill or some technology that made death optional, do you think that Christians would be like, nope, not going to take that pill?
Made death optional. Yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. I think more Christians would be less likely to take the pill.
Yeah, but they'd still take it. It's still optional, right? You can still choose to unalive or whatever.
I don't know. I doubt it. Depending on the meaning in your life, I doubt it.
Well, then, you know what? The people who take the pill are going to far exceed in population and reproductive capacity the people who don't.
but
You're
I guess
pushing
we
the
should just like
objective of the
get.
pill.
I think we should avoid. I think this is getting
I
to some
like it.
strange places now. Of course, Josh
I guess
likes it, but
the observance of objective
well,
theory seems to be
well,
obsession.
strange and queer are a synonym, and Josh does like queers, but yeah. So look, let's just try and make it like. I guess what I mean. I feel like all of that was like that would never do like all of that. Even if it were successful, the stuff about meaning and stuff. I doubt that's like at all compelling to anyone to believe that there's a God. Like, why would I think there's actually a being that has a mind who created us? Some supernatural being who created the universe and us. Why would I believe there's such thing? Is there like evidence or an argument that such thing exists?
There's no evidence of the Big Bang. There's theories on it. There's no one
We're
who's
talking
been there.
about
Well, a
God. We're talking
theory.
about God.
That's actually just definitionally false. A theory is just a hypothesis that's evidentially and theoretically virtuous. So it's well supported by theoretical constraints and the evidence.
Right.
And of course, the Big Bang. If you looked into like literally any physical evidence, like literature in physics, you would know that it's extremely well supported. It's actually a consensus. And also, if you also read, 51% of American physicists are actually believers in God. So it's a consensus that the physical data does show there's a Big Bang. Obviously, the physical information is under determining there's a God, right? It doesn't make God less likely, but there's like stuff like redshift and there's a range of stuff that shows the Big Bang did
We can
happen, that
actually,
there was
we,
cosmic inflation.
yeah, we can still see the Big Bang, right? We see the cosmic microwave background radiation, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's what's left over of the Big
There's,
Bang.
I doubt there's a single cosmologist on the planet who denies the Big Bang, or even physicists for that matter. Right? I think they think that the information, the available physical datum, strongly corroborates with the theory, such that they're irrational for not believing there's not a Big Bang. But what does the Big Bang looks like? That rhetoric doesn't even do. Also, my phone's literally on 5%. But that rhetoric doesn't do anything. Like, suppose I don't lose anything in saying that some physical theory I believed was wrong. Like, imagine I also like we had some view about like how an organ functioned and we were wrong. Okay, I would just revise my view. I mean, that's straightforwardly not. First, that's like a tu quoque at best. I don't know if you know what that is, but that's like some fallacy at saying, well, if I believe in this thing that has no evidence and you believe in that thing, no evidence, then I'm fine in doing that or something. Which obviously, like, supposing I'm irrational, you're irrational, well, we both ought not be doing what we're doing. So you're not in any better position to not be doing something you shouldn't be because I'm not. Right? But all I'm asking before my phone dies is if you have any evidence that a God exists.
The closest you can't have any evidence for or against God really in the long run. You can theorize on it all day long, but yeah. But you can't theorize on your own.
To theorize is to gather evidence. Yeah. But do you just mean hypothesize or something? Like
I wrote in the comments.
You just speculate, you mean?
Yeah,
just
I wrote my
speculate on whether.
Yeah, and I didn't really.
Yeah, I mean, I disagree with that strongly. I actually think there are evidences for theism, but they're like so weak, they're not even like significant in any way.
I guess, yeah.
And of course, I think the evidence does show atheism, and that's why I'm an atheist in my philosophical investigations. But my phone's now in 2%. I don't know why. Once my phone gets to 5%, it like increases exponentially the speed my phone dies. It's so weird. Maybe it's something about an Android.
Yeah, it's in sleep mode and using your GPU or whatever, probably. Because it goes into lazy mode.
I have to end it because it's on 2%. And if I don't end the live now,
I have a challenge for you. Ask for a miracle. Then, that's the only way you're going to know if there's a God or not. That's for straight up miracles.
Well, I don't think miracles. Even if all the miracles you can show me, like if you can show me a bunch of miracles, I don't think those would do anything.
Like whatever. God straight up lit up the trees in front of you with some angel dust or something. I'm just like, whatever. Really?